for today introduce himself and get started whenever he's ready.
Hey, good morning, everyone. Thank you for taking the time to join us for this presentation. I'm eager to, present to you and see what questions you have. My name is Omar Mohammed. I'm an immigration attorney, and I currently with the Legal Aid Society of Rochester. I have been with them for over 3 years. My current position is the supervising attorney for the Immigration Law Unit. This presentation is intended to give you an overview of the most common immigration statuses or lack thereof. Basically, what's your legal immigration status in the U.S.? Do you even have one? So with that being said, I'm going to start and sharing my screen for the slides. If you have any questions, I guess, Olivia, do you want them to ask throughout, or you want to keep it to the end? Does it matter?
It doesn't matter, whatever you're more comfortable with.
All right, so I think we could do throughout and at the end as well, because sometimes if there's a question, like when I'm discussing a particular topic, let me know. I can't really see. I don't know how that would be kind of relate to me. I can't see if who's raising their hand, but if there's something, maybe the teachers or someone else can let us know.
Yeah, if you guys have questions, put them in the chat, please, if you can, and I'll be sure to monitor the chat for Mr. Mohammed.
All right, so thank you. With that being said, let's start the presentation. 1 second. Okay, are you able to see my screen?
Yes, we can see it.
Okay, so the title of our presentation today is "What is my immigration status?" Okay, so obviously the best status or the best position to be in is to be a United States citizen. There's nothing better than that. There is many kind of a few ways, but the most common ways to become a United States citizen is to be born in the United States. It doesn't matter what's the status of your parents. All it matters is that you were born on U.S. soil. And that includes territories such as Puerto Rico, Guam, and the American Samoas as well. That's the most common and the best way is to become a citizen through birth. Option 2, I guess, is to acquire citizenship through your U.S. parents. Acquire means you were born outside of the United States, but you became a citizen at birth. The minute you were born, you became a citizen. Your parents, your parent or parents need to meet certain requirements, including certain number of physical presence in the U.S. before you were born, in order for them to kind of give citizenship to you at birth.
Mr. Mohammed, sorry to interrupt. We can only see a blank screen. Do you have a presentation up that we should be seeing right now?
Yeah.
Why don't you try unsharing and then sharing it again, if that's okay?
Okay, give me 1 second. I'm not sure why that is happening. 1 second. I'm going to try to download it into my computer, see if that will make a difference, because I'm doing it through the browser.
Okay, thank you so much.
Yeah, I'm not sure why it's showing us blank. Let's try again. Okay, where are we? Okay, so I'm going to start sharing again. Let me know if you see, can you see it now?
Yes, can everyone see it? Yes, I see some nods. Okay, thank you so much.
Okay, let's from this. Okay, are you still able to see it? Okay, so like I was saying, option 2 was to acquire citizenship, which means you were born outside of the United States, but you became a citizen at birth through your parents. The other one is to derive citizenship, again, through your parent or parents. Derive is different from acquire in the sense that you were not a citizen at birth, but then you became a citizen later because maybe your parents became a citizen, they're naturalized, and then you were still under 18. That way you got your citizenship through them. Or you entered the United States, before you were 18 and on a green card, but then you became a citizen through your parents as well. That's to derive citizenship. And the most common way to get US citizenship is through applying for what they call naturalization. Means you had a green card before, you meet certain residence requirements. There are usually 5 years, but 3 years if you are married to a US citizen. And there are certain other requirements that you have to meet, as well as passing certain civil and English tests to become a United States citizen through naturalization. There are waivers and exceptions for the test, such as if you are 55 years or older and you've been a U.S. And you've been a lawful permanent resident for 15 years, you can take the test in your own language. Or if you are 50 years or older and you've been a green card holder for over 20 years, you can also take it in your own language. As well as there's an exemption for persons who are disabled. Let's say that a person has a physical or mental disability that prevents them from taking the English or civic test. They can get a form completed by their doctor, and that, if accepted by immigration, that will waive or exempt you from taking the test in the English language, or taking the test at all at times. So as we said, US citizenship is the best thing to have. After that is lawful permanent residence, or what sometimes referred to as a green card holder. To be a green card holder gives you the ability to live in the US permanently, means forever, as long as your green card status is not taken away from you, and to be able to work and to petition for family members. There are many ways to basically receive green card or a lawful permanent resident status, but the most common way is a family member petitioning for you, let's say your spouse or parents, or other family members petitioning for you. Option 2 is an employer, like you said, if you're working for an employer and they're willing to sponsor you and petition for you, that's option 2. And option 3 is through humanitarian relief, let's say through a refugee or asylee, or VAWA, which stands for Violence Against Women Act. It also includes men as well, but it's the statute is called Violence Against Women, but it includes everyone. Or special SIJS, which is intended for individuals under 21 and unmarried. We will discuss these in more details toward the middle of the presentation. And then you have the U, which is for a U visa, T for T visas, and other statuses as well. When you are a green card holder, again, like I said, you can have it for 5 years and then apply for citizenship, or you can have it for 3 years if you are married to a US citizen and then apply for US citizenship. Okay. With the green card, you are authorized to work without having it's also considered permission to be employed as well. You don't need a separate work authorization if you have a green card. Okay. And the worst or least, I guess, preferred position to be on is to be undocumented. Unfortunately, it means like you have no status in the U.S. You are guest here, but you don't have any legal authorization to be present in the U.S. And most common way people end up in this situation is either they came without inspection, they just crossed the border, either the southern border with Mexico or north border with Canada, and they are just here. Immigration either knows or does not know about them, but they are here without any status. And then the second way that individuals become undocumented is they may have came on a valid visa, like a visitor visa or a student visa or some other type of non-immigrant visa, but then their visa expired and they just stayed over. They didn't leave when they were supposed to. So at that point in time, they become what we call undocumented. It means they came in legally, but now they don't have legal or permission to stay in the U.S. And that is kind of the least likely, the best position. I mean, the least the worst position to be in, let's put it that way, in terms of immigration status. The document you are looking at is what they call the Form I-94. It's a document that you get issued when you come into the U.S. on a non-immigrant visa, like we were discussing before, like a visitor visa, student visa, or some other type of visa. The one on the right side, I'm not sure it's on my right side, is for a person who came on an F1, which is a student visa. This person came in on July 25th, 2017. They entered the U.S. Their class of admission means what type of visa they had. They had an F1 visa. How long could they stay? It's DS, which means duration of status. As long as they are enrolled in a school, they can stay. As long as they are enrolled full-time in a school, they're allowed to stay. And there's redacted information, but that's the information regarding this person. And this person is from China. And on the left side, so this one on the right side, you can obtain from the USCP website. It's called Most Recent I-94. If you Google that, you go to their website and you enter information from your passport, and this notice should come up. On the left side is it's kind of the same. It's the same thing, but a different in different format. They were being issued before. They are paper ones. Like you basically get handed a physical paper. It's the same thing. It's an I-94, but you get handed that at the airport when you come in, or the land border. And this person is from Mexico, and he came in on a B2, which is a visitor for pleasure. And it shows that this person entered the U.S. on September 21st, 2011, and they are allowed to stay until March 20th, 2012. After that, they either can file to extend their status or need to leave the U.S. Otherwise, they become undocumented and unauthorized to stay in the U.S. And with a visitor visa, for example, you're not allowed to work. You're legally, you're just here supposed to be for pleasure, like for visiting purposes, and you're supposed to leave after that's over. Okay, so we've been talking about immigrant versus non-immigrant, which is like immigrant is obviously a person who's here with the intention of staying in the U.S. forever or permanently, where non-immigrant means the person is here just temporarily, like we said earlier, like someone who came here to study, or someone who came here to visit, for pleasure. Permanent immigration status. To get permanent immigration status, you can get it through going through what they call consular process and receiving your visa at the U.S. Embassy in your native country, or you can have it in the US. For example, you came in a non-immigrant status like a visitor or the student visa, but then there were options where you were able to what they call adjust status, means move your status from a non-immigrant into an immigrant, and that is done within the US, given that if you basically meet certain requirements. This is kind of a chart of immigrant versus non-immigrant statuses with, with some qualifiers, I would say. So the first one here is lawful permanent resident, LPR, which we discussed earlier. The next one is refugee or asylee. While it's not, when you come in as a refugee or an asylee, you don't really have, you only have that status, but then after a year, you get to apply for a green card or a lawful permanent resident or green card. The second one is a person with a special immigrant visa, an SIV. We have seen them being issued, for example, to Afghans who assisted the US military or NATO allies, and they can come in and get status through that. We also discussed persons qualified for Violence Against Women Act, and persons with special immigrant juvenile status. These are immigrant status, means they're a person that comes under one of these, their intention is to stay here permanently in the US. Versus non-immigrant, which is like, again, a valid visa holder who has like a tourist visa, student visa, business visa, they come in here, but they're supposed to leave. Person with temporary protected status, TPS. I mean, usually the person is already in the US, and it's kind of, to be called, it's a status, technically not a status. You're just here temporarily because your country is either going through a civil war, natural disaster, or something like that. And the US government is saying, hey, we know you're here. You don't have permission to remain here, but we will not kick you out. We will not deport you because we know your country is going through, hard times. And usually it's valid for 18 months, and the US government tends to extend that as long as the country is still in a good position to receive individuals from the US. And then we have persons qualify for deferred action for childhood arrivals. This is DACA, intended for individuals who came in as minor children, came in as children and are here in the US now with no status. It's similar to TPS, but the recipient has to have met certain requirements, like been here since a certain day, I believe, which is like 2007, and have continuous residence and stuff like that. There are certain requirements, so usually individuals who came here as children are the one who qualify for it. Next one is person with humanitarian parole. We will discuss this a little more in more details a little bit into the presentation. But this is just where the government either allows you to come in into the US for a limited period of time, usually 2 years, on a humanitarian basis, basically. And then we have persons with U visa and T visas. These are directed or available for people who have been victims of crimes or victims of trafficking.
Mr. Mohammed, there's 2 questions in the chat. The first is about obtaining an I-94 if you don't have a passport. And the second one is about TPS and how someone with a TPS status can become an immigrant.
Okay, so are you able to read the question or?
Sure. The first one says, a few days ago, I met with a family from Afghanistan. They don't have passports, so they were unable to get an I-94 online. How can they get an I-94 without a passport number? They are refugees.
Okay, so usually there's a document that immigration gave them It's not a passport, but I don't remember the name of it off the top of my head, but there's a document where you could replace that document number for the passport number. And usually you'll be able to obtain it that way. If you have been unsuccessful and you really need the I-94, you might have to contact immigration, Custom and Border Patrol, Border Protection. They have an office, I believe, in their main office is in Buffalo for this region, and they should be able to provide you with that document. But I have been able to get it, especially for Afghans. They come in on a document. I don't know the name of it off the top of my head. I apologize, but it's just a piece of paper, and it's in lieu of a passport because they don't have a passport. And you just switch that number for that document with the passport number, and that should be able to.
Okay, great. And the second question says, many of our students are of SIV and human parolee status. Are they TPS? Can you speak to the process of becoming an immigrant? And then here's another question. Can people hold a humanitarian parolee visa? Can people who have that apply for asylum?
Okay, so the first one is kind of, it's two questions. It's kind of asking, people with SIV is different from individuals with parole. And SIV means basically there's a way for you to move forward to become an immigrant. And it depends on exactly where in the SIV process you are. Like, did you already went through, the consulate in, for example, if you're from Afghanistan, been through the consulate in Kabul, or are you applying for SIV now from within the US? But if you qualify, you should be able to get legal permanent status. Where the parole, there's really no way from parole to, parole does not lead to permanent residence. Parole, you are in or allowed to be in the US, and with parole you can apply for permission to work, but it does not lead to permanent residence, unfortunately. It doesn't lead permanent resident directly from parole into becoming a permanent resident. You might be able to re-parole or extend your parole, but you can't apply for permanent status directly from parole. That's for the first two questions. The other question, correct me if I'm wrong, but is asking, can you have parole and TPS or asylum? What is it? What was it saying?
Can people who hold humanitarian parolee visa apply for asylum?
Yes. So if you have humanitarian parole and you also have a credible fear of returning to your native country, you can apply for asylum. And also, if you qualify for TPS, there are certain cutoff dates. You can apply for TPS as well. And again, asylum, if granted, will lead to permanent residency, where TPS will not lead into permanent residency, but will give you protection from being removed from the US for a certain period of time. Okay. All right, so the difference here is the difference between refugee and asylee. We mentioned that in passing earlier, but in short, a refugee is someone who went through the UNHCR and came into the US as a refugee, where an asylee is someone who came to the US either with no status or with some other non-immigrant status and then applied for asylum in the US. And in both situations, person is eligible to apply for a green card after having been physically present in the US for 1 year. And the person with the SIV, again, we mentioned that earlier, it's qualifies to become an LPR for through several programs. For example, the Afghan Allied Protection Act of 2009. For Afghan nationals who are employed on or behalf of the US government and meet other requirements. Also they have to go through the Department of State to get certain documents from them as well. These are examples of work authorization card, what it might look like. Here it is. And then the social security card, usually if you're not in permanent residence status or you're not a citizen, you will get this this language here which says valid for work only with DHS authorization. So when you apply for employment, the employer is gonna want to see documents to prove that you have legal status or legal permission to work. Once you become like a green card holder or citizen, you can go back to the Social Security office and ask them to produce a new card without this language if you don't want it, which you should, basically.
Mr. Muhammad, I have another question from one of the teachers. One of her students wants to know if you can answer, does asylum also lead to citizenship?
Yes, but so you get asylum first, and then you can apply for a green card. The green card will be issued once you have been physically in the US for a year or more. Once you have that green card, then you have to wait 5 years of physical, like being in the US as a permanent resident for 5 years, and then you can apply for citizenship. So there are certain steps you need to take, but yes, asylum does lead to ultimately citizenship. Okay, this is an example of an SIV visa. Pretty sure most of individuals who have received this are familiar with it, but that's how it looks. This one was issued in Kabul. Okay, VAWA, it's a relief offered to immigrants who have who are survivors of domestic abuse or or violence or battery through either their spouse, child, or parent. And persons who are granted VAWA relief are immediately eligible to apply for a green card. And then we talked about the special immigrant juvenile status. It's for individuals who have been either abandoned, abused, neglected by their parent or parents, and they are in the US. They are under 21 and unmarried, and you need also an order from like a family court saying that this person it's in their best interest not to be returned to their home country. And again, this also leads to permanent residence status. Valid visa holders, as discussed earlier, it's like non-immigrant status, that you get here for a certain amount of time, and then you have to leave once before it expires. And TPS, again, it's kind of as a relief offered to persons from designated countries. The list of designated countries changes from time to time, and it's basically due to environmental disasters, armed conflict, or epidemics. This is the current countries designated for TPS. Each one has a certain cutoff dates for basically when the person has to have been residing in the US since what day. There's usually a cutoff date for the person to qualify. This list, we recently Afghanistan, Ukraine, and were added to the list, I believe, in Ethiopia, due to what's going on in these three countries. But each country has a different day of eligibility.
Mr. Muhammad, I have another question from Gina. She says, one student is wondering about the timeline for receiving a green card if they are currently an SIV holder.
So it depends. I mean, we have seen them being issued like 6 months after filing, a year after filing. It really the timeline really is not. It's really hard to say exactly when. Usually USCIS will publish what they call processing times, and you can look it up based on the date you filed your case. And if your case is already beyond that processing timeline, then you can contact USCIS and request, basically submit a status request, asking them what's going on with your case. Some cases take longer because of some, just minor mistakes or issues. Other times is because they are doing more background check due to basically the name might match something in the system for a different person that might be on a watch list or something like that. So there are many reasons why a case might take longer, but usually once your case is beyond that processing time published by USCIS, you can contact them and they have to answer you within 30 days, telling you what's going on with your case. Okay. So person with the U visa is for people who have basically were victims of certain crimes. There's a list of crimes that qualify, and they have to show that they have suffered harm and that they have cooperated or cooperating with law enforcement for the investigation or prosecution of that crime. And usually you also need some type of document signed by either by a law enforcement officer or the judge or district attorney saying that you are cooperating with them. And once you get your visa, once it's approved, then you can apply for a green. It's valid for 4 years and allows you to work as well. And then you can apply for a green card after 3 years. Similar requirements apply to a T visa, but the T visa is intended for individuals who were victims of human trafficking. We discussed DACA, which is for, and it's usually valid for 2 years with work authorization. Currently, due to ongoing litigation, immigration is accepting new applications for DACA, but they're not adjudicating them. They are accepting and adjudicating renewals, requests for renewals, individuals who have had DACA in the past. And then finally, we have persons with humanitarian parole. Again, it's just you coming into the U.S. due to humanitarian concerns that are going on in your native country, and it does not lead to permanent resident status. Unfortunately, the current main programs are the Cuban parole, the Afghan Ally Operation Refuge, and the Ukrainian parole. The Cuban parole is different in the sense that it does, if you were paroled as a Cuban, you can apply for a green card after a year, which is a pretty kind of special things for Cubans. It's based on a law from 1956, I believe, called the Cuban Adjustment Act, which means any Cuban who's a citizen or native of Cuba who were admitted or paroled into the United States are then allowed to apply for a green card after they have been in the U.S. for physically present in the U.S. for at least 1 year, and they have to meet certain other requirements. Okay, so that is presentation. I now answer any questions you have.
Are there any more questions before we let Mr. Mohammed go? Also, if everyone could stay for a few minutes after this presentation, Mr. Davis has a couple announcements for us. So any final questions? We'll wait a couple seconds to see if anyone has any. Here's one. Are there translators for questions over the phone?
I will like questions over the phone by who? So if you're talking about immigration, USCIS, for example, there are certain type of application which you, the applicant, need to provide an interpreter. And there are others where USCIS will provide you with an interpreter. So it depends on the type of application and in which office you are appearing. But there are, and it sometimes it depends on each office. Some offices will call, I'm talking about USCIS, will call an interpreter who most likely will be over the phone if you don't speak the English language.
I think this question is asking about the Legal Aid Society phone number. Are there translators available if people have questions for you, for your office?
So our staff, we have the staff speaks certain languages. So it depends on what language it is, but we do have kind of interpretation services through a company, but we might not be able to, like when you call, directly speak to you in that language, but we can call you back with an interpreter who speaks your language, but you need to communicate at least that you need an interpreter in what language, and then someone will call you back if our staff does not speak that language.
Okay, great. And then here's a couple more questions. Gina, a student in Gina's class wants to know, does a student waiting on a green card that's in process need to file taxes?
So that's more of a tax question, but I mean, so student, if a person has a student visa, then they're not really allowed to work unless they have what they call OBT, which is kind of a work permission that's given to students sometimes during their study and most of the time after their studies. I can't really answer that question because it's more of a tax question. So if the person is required to file taxes, then I would say they should. But again, I can't really give you a good answer for that. It depends on, they have to speak to someone who specializes with taxes.
The next question is from Rebecca's class. What programs are available to bring family members here?
So there's it depends on the person's status and who the family member you are trying to bring. So, there's the family, like as a US citizen or a green card holder, you can petition for your family through the normal process, which is filing a family relative petition. And then if they are outside the US, the application goes through USCIS and the visa center, then they are interviewed in their at the US embassy in their native country or the one closest to them. That's the normal process. There are new programs now, such as submit requesting parole for individuals who may or may not be your relative. You just need to show that you are able to financially provide for them. So it depends. It depends on what's that person's status in the US and who are they trying to bring in. So, but there are multiple avenues to do that.
Here's another question. How long would you wait to get a green card when on a special J status?
So the J visas, it depends. Some of them have what they call a 2-year home residency requirement, which means that after you're finished with your the J1 visa, whatever purpose you came here for, you need to go back to your home country and stay 2 years before you can apply for an immigrant status. There is a way to request that be waived. Usually it's done through either like some letter from your US embassy, your home country your native country embassy in the US, kind of request them for them to kind of say, hey, that's okay if this person doesn't go back and stay for 2 years. They can apply for permanent residency. So the process would depend. If you have the home residency requirement, it might take longer because you have to first ask for a waiver of forgiveness from having to go back if you don't want to go back. And if you don't, then it really depends on, who's petitioning for you. Is it like an employer or is it a family member, and what's their status? So the timeline depends. I mean, it could be as short as 6 months or as long as 3 years or so.
Another question, a student is wondering how long it takes to get an asylum interview in general.
So all time process, and it kind of depends, but we have seen them schedule asylum interviews for Afghans, for example, pretty quickly. Quickly meaning like in a matter of months. versus other applications where we had them. I personally have applications that have been pending since 2015. So, you can't really know for sure. USCIS sometimes takes, or the asylum office makes certain cases more of a priority. It adjudicates them much quicker than others. But it depends. I'm just speaking from experience. We have seen cases for Afghans being processed much quicker, given that there was a large number of applications filed, and they are here again, and most of them on 2-year parole, which is probably coming to an end soon.
It looks like we have two more questions. The first is, what is the maximum weight for getting a green card?
There is no maximum. I mean, there's, like I mentioned earlier, there's a processing time which USCIS says, oh, for this type of case we are taking this long, but there's sometimes it can go way beyond that, where you would have to either kind of continue contacting USCIS, or even at times have to like bring a case against them in federal court to force them to move your case along through what they call a mandamus. So, the longest personally I had a case for is someone started it off, but then it took like 8 years for them to get a green card. And that's because there was concern that that person might have been a member of a terrorist organization, unfortunately. So that took a long time. But, usually the average, I would say, is green cards, 1 to 2 years average.
And then there's two more questions from Gina's class. The first is, a student is wondering how an expired passport might impact being able to get a real ID, as well as waiting on immigration petitions. And then the second one is a question about, are there references for anywhere else students can go for help about their immigration cases besides the Legal Aid Society?
Okay, so the first question is an expired passport. I mean, I don't know what, the DMV for Real ID Act usually gives points. So I don't know how many points, if any, the DMV will give. So I honestly cannot answer that question, whether you'll be able to get a Real ID Act or not. You have to go down to the DMV or look on their website to see, if that is acceptable, an expired passport. Effect on your petition for someone, it usually does not have any effect. I'm not sure if this passport is a US passport or a passport from another country, but in either case, an expired passport should not affect the petition for like a family member at all. And then question 2 about contacts for students. I mean, I can email you the list of other agencies after the presentation, and then you can share it with the group. But I don't know off the top of my head an organization that specifically assists students. Students, their best option probably is their officer, the designated officer in their school. Usually there's a person designated for individuals on student visa, where that person, their job is to help these students. So might be the first, option for these people.
Well, thank you so much, Mr. Mohammed. Mr. Mohammed, did you go to school in Rochester?
Yes.
Did you go to Jefferson?
This is Mr. Davis?
Yes, it is. How are you?
My, oh my, what? Man.
How are you, my friend? I'm glad to see you're doing well.
Wow, life, I'm telling you, man. How have you been?
I've been very good, thank you.
Wow.
I'll get your email and we will converse.
We definitely, huh? I remember you very vividly. You guys look different a little bit on camera. And
I'm older, Mohammed. I'm older. It's okay.
I think it's been like what, 17 years, 15 years?
Yes, a very long time.
Yeah. Wow.
Well, thank you very much for the information. You can maybe Olivia can get a copy of this in case anyone would like to review it. And students, as you know, I know our friend here, he was my student. So if you want to contact him, let me know. I will help make that happen.
With the student regarding which scenario? Which one are you talking about?
Any scenario, if they come to me, I can, yeah.
Yeah,
Nothing
yeah,
in specific.
absolutely. Olivia can share my contact info with you, and I'll look forward to hearing from you. And if there's any questions, anytime, no problem.
Excellent. Thank you so much. And it's very nice to see your face.
Likewise, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay.
Okay, students, we have a few, before we get going, we have a few announcements that I need everyone to listen to.
All right, 1 second.
The first one is, remember next week is vacation. And as vacation, you will not be at school. I will be at school, but you will not be at school. We are in the process of hiring 2 new ESL teachers. And when that happens, what will happen to your classes is they will get smaller because we will be moving students around with other students who have a similar test score. So you will don't be surprised if you get a new teacher sometime after February, because we're hiring 2 new teachers. And remember, when you have a smaller class, it'll help you learn better. I know taxes were mentioned in this at some point. Students, do not just do your taxes. If you have questions, you need to ask. Because once you do your taxes, if you make a mistake, it can take a very long time to fix it, and it could impact you in ways you don't know. So if you have questions about taxes, ask. Don't just do it. GED students, if you're there, I hope you're still there. Remember, the GED is going to be at the end of next month. You need to fill out that form completely and make sure that your teacher has it by, I think I've sent out a date to the teachers by March 1st. I will not accept any after March 1st because I have to put the order in, and then you will get it. The last thing for everyone, and please remember, we are having a possible field trip. It is dependent on your attendance. You have to have good attendance. And we are having someone come to do a tax presentation. So don't do anything until you see that. You have time. Lastly, I'm very happy to see a lot of people staying later in the afternoon. That's very good. You should know that we have a person coming who has access to free iPads if you qualify. Quinn will let you know or help you figure out if you qualify, but that also is going to depend on your attendance and if you are coming every day. As always, Miss Leah and myself, we're here in the office. We're around. If you have any questions, you can ask us. Everyone have a great vacation. Be safe, and we'll see you when you get back. Have a good day.
Thanks for coming, everyone. Oh, Kim has a question. I
Yes.
think.
What's the question?
Hold on, I'm sorry. Frank, go ahead. Who should we ask? Oh, who should we ask for taxes? We're gonna wait till the presentation. Next week.
Yeah, wait till that presentation will let you know, because we'll tell them who the clientele is, who you are, and then they will let you know because they'll know more of your situation.
All right, thank you.
All right? Okay.
Bye, everyone. Thanks for
Everyone have a good
coming.
day.